Rome gets sold as invincible. Eagle standards, discipline. Legions that conquered Gaul, crushed Carthage, humiliated Greece. Almost nobody talks about the uncomfortable truth that on June 9th, 53 BC, in the baking Mesopotamian desert near a town called Carrhae, 40,000 Roman soldiers walked into a trap and 20,000 of them died screaming. 10,000 more got dragged away in chains. The richest man in Rome got his head cut off and delivered to a Parthian king at a wedding feast. Which of these is legend, and which one sits in mass graves and ancient chronicles? 4,000 cavalry, 4,000 light troops? He has fought in civil wars, crushed the slave rebellion under Spartacus back in 71 BC, shared the consulship with Pompey the Great. Now at age 60, he wants what his rivals Julius Caesar and Pompey have earned through blood. Military glory, a triumph. His name carved into history not as a banker, but as a conqueror. Crassus was born around 115 BC into a plebeian family with senatorial rank but modest wealth. His father Publius Licinius Crassus served as consul in 97 BC and won a triumph for victories in Spain. But when Gaius Marius and his faction seized Rome in 87 BC, the family was hunted. His father and younger brother died. Crassus fled to Spain, hid in a cave for months, then joined Lucius Cornelius Sulla's forces when Sulla returned to take Rome by force in 83 BC. At the Battle of the Colline Gate in 82 BC, Crassus commanded the right wing of Sulla's army and helped break the resistance. Victory gave him access to Sulla's prescriptions, the legalized looting of political enemies. If you value documented ancient military history like this, subscribe. It is the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you are hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Plutarch's Life of Crassus, written around 125 years after the battle, which draws on contemporary accounts, including letters and reports from survivors, and Cassius Dio's Roman History, compiled in the early 3rd century AD from earlier archives and senatorial records. We also reference modern archaeological work published in Gareth Sampson's The Defeat of Rome in the East from Yale University Press in 2008, cross-checked with battlefield surveys near Harran conducted by Turkish and European teams between 1990 and 2015. Now back to the information. Crassus made his fortune buying confiscated property at auction for almost nothing, then reselling it at market rates. He assembled a private fire brigade of 500 trained slaves. When a building burned, he offered to buy the property and neighboring structures while flames spread. Owners sold cheap, his crew rebuilt. He collected rent or sold for profit. Plutarch writes that at one point Crassus owned most of Rome. He loaned silver to senators at favorable rates, binding them politically. He financed Julius Caesar's early career when Caesar was drowning in debt in 62 BC. By 55 BC, estimates place his wealth at 7,000 talents, equivalent to nearly 200 million sesterces. For comparison, a Roman legionary earned around 900 sesterces per year. Crassus could field multiple legions from his own funds. But money does not earn triumphs. Pompey crushed the pirates in 67 BC and conquered the eastern kingdoms. Caesar was winning Gaul, crossing rivers, building bridges, sending back dispatches that made Rome cheer. Crassus had beaten slaves at the Third Servile War and crucified 6,000 survivors along the Appian Way from Rome to Capua. Not enough. In 60 BC, the three men formed what historians call the First Triumvirate. Not a legal office, a private alliance to dominate the Senate. Crassus bankrolled Caesar. Pompey provided military prestige. Caesar held political genius and growing legions. The arrangement worked until 55 BC when the three met again at Lucca in Etruria. They renewed the pact. Caesar got Gaul for another 5 years. Pompey took the two Spains. Crassus received Syria. The Parthian Empire stretched from the Euphrates to the borders of India. The Parthians were Iranian, successors to the Achaemenid Persians, who Alexander the Great crushed in 331 BC. They had risen in 247 BC when a chieftain named Arsaces rebelled against the Seleucid Greeks. By 53 BC, Orodes II ruled Parthia. The kingdom had wealth, Silk Road trade, silver mines. Cities like Ctesiphon and Seleucia packed with merchants. Crassus saw an opportunity to match Alexander's conquests and fill Rome's treasury. No Roman general had campaigned deep into Parthia. Pompey and Sulla had negotiated on friendly terms. There was no casus belli. Crassus did not care. He wanted a war. He garrisoned towns in western Mesopotamia with about a fifth of his force. Then he returned to Syria for winter. Artavasdes II, king of Armenia, visited Crassus and offered 40,000 auxiliary troops on the condition that the Romans invade through Armenian mountains where terrain would neutralize Parthian cavalry. Crassus refused. He preferred the direct route through the Mesopotamian plain. Plutarch records that omens plagued the campaign. At the Euphrates crossing, an eagle standard fell into the water. Troops grumbled. A tribune named Gaius Attius Capito publicly cursed Crassus at the city gate, calling down the wrath of the gods. Crassus ignored everything. In the spring of 53 BC, he mobilized the main army and marched east. He took most of the infantry and a small cavalry contingent north to punish Armenia for aligning with Rome. He sent his cavalry commander Serena south with orders to scout and delay the Romans. Serena commanded roughly 10,000 men. 1,000 were cataphracts, heavy cavalry with rider and horse encased in scale armor made of overlapping bronze or iron plates laced to leather backing. They carried a kontos, a 12-foot lance held two-handed, and a long sword. The remaining 9,000 were horse archers on lighter, faster mounts. They used composite bows with a draw weight around 160 pounds, firing arrows effective at 200 yards. Serena brought 1,000 camels loaded with spare arrows. Supply trains could restock the archers for hours of sustained fire. The Romans marched south along the Balik River. An Arab chieftain named Ariamnes, who had helped Pompey in earlier campaigns, offered to guide Crassus. Ariamnes was on Parthian payroll. He led the Romans away from the river into open desert. Crassus's quaestor, Gaius Cassius Longinus, recommended staying near water and using the river as a supply line. Crassus overruled him. On June 9th, 53 BC, near Carrhae, Roman scouts rode ahead and did not return. Then a large force of cavalry appeared on the horizon. The Roman troops, already exhausted from marching in heat, panicked. Serena ordered his cataphracts forward. They had covered their armor with cloth. When they came within sight, they dropped the covering simultaneously. Margianian steel glittered in the sun. The sight was designed to break Roman morale. He ordered a hollow square, each side formed by 12 cohorts. This formation protected against flanking but sacrificed mobility. The Parthian horse archers surrounded the square, staying just beyond the range of Roman pila javelins, which had an effective throw distance of about 30 yards. The archers fired from 150 to 200 yards. Roman skirmishers charged to drive them off. The archers shot them down and retreated. The legionaries locked shields into testudo formation. Overlapping shields created a shell. Arrows bounced off. But the formation froze the Romans in place. They could not attack. They could not maneuver. Heat climbed. Men suffocated under armor and shields. When the Romans loosened formation to fight back, the cataphracts wheeled away and the horse archers resumed firing at exposed troops. Plutarch records that the Romans expected the Parthians to run out of arrows. Then they saw the camel train. Thousands of camels carrying refills. The arrows never stopped. Crassus sent his son Publius with 1,300 Gallic cavalry, 500 archers, and 8 cohorts of legionaries to break the horse archers. Publius was 26 years old. He had served under Caesar in Gaul and brought the Gallic cavalry as a gift from Caesar to his father. The Gauls were skilled riders, famous for closing with enemy cavalry in hand-to-hand combat. The Parthian shot, a technique requiring years of training. The archer twists in the saddle, draws, and releases, while the horse maintains speed. The Gauls pursued. The Parthians led them away from the main Roman force over broken ground, until Publius realized he was cut off. The cataphracts turned. They encircled Publius. His Gauls fought hard. Cassius Dio reports they grabbed Parthian lances and dragged riders from horses. Some Gauls dismounted and crawled under Parthian horses, stabbing upward into the unarmored bellies. But they were outnumbered. The cataphracts closed in. Publius, wounded multiple times, ordered his shield-bearer to kill him rather than let him be captured. The Parthians beheaded him, mounted his head on a spear, and rode back to the main battlefield. Plutarch writes that a legate named Octavius gathered officers and rallied troops. They covered Crassus with shields, declaring no Parthian arrow would strike their commander until every man fell. The Parthians surrounded the Roman square completely. Horse archers circled, shooting from all sides. Cataphracts charged in rotating waves. The Romans could not advance. They could not retreat in formation. By nightfall, 20,000 Romans lay dead. 4,000 more were too wounded to move. The Parthians, unwilling to fight in darkness, withdrew to camp. Ignatius, a Roman cavalry commander, led 300 horsemen to Carrhae at midnight. He called to the sentinels on the wall, told them of a great battle, then rode on to Zeugma without identifying himself. Plutarch writes that Ignatius saved his own skin but earned a reputation for desertion. Coponius, the garrison commander at Carrhae, sent out patrols and guided survivors back. 4 Roman cohorts got lost in the dark and wandered into marshes. At dawn, the Parthians found them on a hill. Only 20 survived. The Parthians also discovered the 4,000 wounded left behind and killed them all. Crassus hesitated. His troops, angry and exhausted, forced him to go. The meeting took place on low ground between the armies. Serena offered Crassus a horse. Crassus mounted. As the parley continued, a scuffle broke out. Plutarch and Cassius Dio give conflicting accounts. One says a Roman officer grabbed a Parthian weapon. Another claims the Parthians struck first. In the chaos, Crassus was killed. His officers were slaughtered. Cassius escaped with about 500 cavalry and 10,000 infantry. He led them back to Syria, defended it as proquestor for 2 more years, and later joined the conspiracy to assassinate Julius Caesar in 44 BC. Plutarch records that when the head arrived, a Greek actor was performing Euripides' Bacchae. The actor grabbed Crassus's head and used it as a prop for the scene where Agave displays the head of Pentheus. The Parthian court cheered. Cassius Dio writes a different version. He claims the Parthians poured molten gold down Crassus's throat, mocking his legendary greed. Ancient sources loved symbolic punishments. Both stories circulated in Rome to intensify hatred of Parthia. Migrated further east into China and founded the village of Lycian. But genetic and archaeological evidence has not confirmed this. The Romans lost several legionary eagles, the standards that represented a legion's honor. Losing an eagle was a national disgrace. Augustus negotiated their return in 20 BC, 33 years after Carrhae, and celebrated the event with the Arch of Augustus in Rome. Plutarch does not give an exact number, but describes them as negligible. Surena's force of 10,000 cavalry had defeated a Roman army 4 times its size. The victory shocked the Roman world. Carrhae joined Cannae in 216 BC and Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD as Rome's worst military defeats. But Surena did not enjoy his triumph. Orodes II, jealous of Surena's popularity and fearing a rival, ordered his execution within months of the battle. The exact method is disputed. Some sources say he was accused of treason. Others claim Orodes simply could not tolerate a general more celebrated than the king. Surena's family, the House of Suren, remained powerful in Parthia for generations, but the hero of Carrhae disappeared from history. The manipular system allowed flexibility on rough terrain. The testudo protected against arrows. But these tactics assumed infantry could close with the enemy. Parthian cavalry refused to engage on Roman terms. They stayed mobile, fired from range, and retreated when threatened. Roman infantry could not catch them. Roman cavalry, 4,000 strong at Carrhae, could not match the Parthian numbers or skill. The legionaries carried pila for throwing at close range, gladi for stabbing in tight formation, and heavy shields for defense. None of this helped against mounted archers shooting from 200 yards. The Arab guide Ariamnes, paid by the Parthians, led the Romans into the worst possible terrain. Open desert, no water, no cover. Heat exhaustion weakened the troops before battle. Plutarch records that soldiers begged for water during the fighting. The Parthians, native to the region, endured the heat and brought sufficient supplies via camel train. The camels themselves became a tactical asset, carrying thousands of arrows to resupply archers in the field. Feigned retreats lured Roman units away from the main force, isolating them for destruction. The killing of Publius Crassus demonstrated this tactic. His 1,300 Gallic cavalry and 8 cohorts, roughly 4,000 men, were drawn away, surrounded, and annihilated. Surena then paraded Publius's head to demoralize the Romans. Psychological warfare. Ancient sources emphasize the Parthian drums, the unveiling of armor, the display of severed heads. These actions shattered Roman morale as much as the arrows. Pompey's wife Julia, Caesar's daughter, had died in 54 BC, weakening the family bond between them. In 49 BC, Caesar crossed the Rubicon with his legions and began the civil war that ended the Republic. Historians debate whether Carrhae caused the civil war or merely accelerated existing tensions. Either way, Crassus's death removed a key stabilizing force. Parthia launched raids into Syria and Armenia. In 36 BC, Mark Antony led a massive invasion of Parthia with 100,000 troops. He suffered heavy losses, though not as catastrophic as Carrhae. Later emperors, including Trajan and Septimius Severus, campaigned in Mesopotamia with mixed success. But Rome never conquered Parthia. The Parthian Empire lasted until 224 AD, when the Sassanid Persians overthrew the Arsacid dynasty. The Sassanids continued Parthian military traditions, fielding cataphracts and horse archers that plagued Rome for another 4 centuries. The Eastern Roman Empire, later called Byzantine, adopted cataphract units themselves by the 6th century AD, recognizing their effectiveness, with a 1st century BC battle. In 2007, a team from Ankara University excavated a mass grave 5 kilometers south of Haran containing skeletal remains showing trauma from arrows and bladed weapons. Radiocarbon dating placed the remains between 100 BC and 1 AD. The skeletons show wounds consistent with Parthian arrows, which had distinctive 3-bladed broadheads designed to penetrate armor and cause maximum bleeding. Some skulls show evidence of blunt force trauma from cavalry weapons. The burial was hasty, bodies thrown into a pit without ceremony. Roman practice honored the dead with proper rites. This mass grave likely contains soldiers who died in the retreat or were executed after capture. Tests using reconstructed composite bows and replica arrows demonstrate penetration through bronze and iron plate at ranges exceeding 150 yards. The composite bow, made from wood, horn, and sinew, stored more energy than a simple wooden bow. Parthian archers trained from childhood, developing the strength and technique to maintain rapid fire. A skilled archer could loose 10 to 12 arrows per minute. With 9,000 archers, the Parthians could fire over 90,000 arrows per minute at peak intensity. Roman shields and armor absorbed some, but concentrated fire overwhelmed defenses. Wounds from broadhead arrows caused severe bleeding. Even non-fatal hits disabled soldiers. Medical knowledge in 53 BC could not treat mass casualties. Wounded men died from blood loss, shock, and heat exhaustion. The testudo formation, celebrated in Roman propaganda, became a death trap at Carrhae. Interlocking shields created a mobile fortress effective against frontal assault and overhead missiles at short range, but it required soldiers to stand close, shields overlapping, moving slowly. In open desert, under relentless arrow fire, the formation cooked troops alive. Temperature inside could exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Men collapsed from heat stroke. Breaking formation meant exposure to arrows. Staying in formation meant slow death. The cataphracts exploited this by charging the testudo. Their lances punched through the shield wall into the packed bodies. When the Romans opened ranks to fight back, the cataphracts withdrew and archers resumed shooting. The Romans had no answer. Refusing Armenian assistance removed 40,000 troops and denied terrain advantage. Trusting Ariamnes, despite warnings, showed poor judgment. Dividing forces by garrisoning towns weakened the main army. Marching into open desert against cavalry played to Parthian strengths. Cassius's advice to follow the river was sound. Water supply, easier terrain, ability to fortify camps near the river. Crassus ignored it. Hubris, ambition, desperation for glory. Ancient sources portray Crassus as greedy and reckless. Plutarch writes that Crassus valued wealth above wisdom and rushed into war without preparation. The Parthians were not considered a major threat. They had not attacked Rome. Pompey had negotiated with them. Intelligence suggested they were disorganized, their forces spread thin. Serena's army appeared small initially. Crassus could not know that Parthian tactics would revolutionize cavalry warfare. He fought by the rules he knew. The Parthians wrote new rules. Byzantine strategists studied Parthian tactics. Arab caliphates in the 7th century AD used similar combined arms approaches. The Mongols in the 13th century employed horse archers and heavy cavalry in patterns echoing Carrhae. European knights eventually faced similar problems against mounted archers in Eastern Europe and the Near East. The solution required combined arms, integrating cavalry, infantry, and archers and coordinated formations. Rome learned slowly. By the 2nd century AD, Roman armies included auxiliary cavalry from Gaul, Germany, and the eastern provinces. Emperors recruited Parthian and Sassanid defectors to teach cavalry tactics. The Roman military evolved, but the lesson cost 20,000 lives at Carrhae. In stature and beauty, he had no equal. His face was painted, his hair parted in the Median fashion, yet his martial prowess was undeniable. He commanded his own forces, slaves and retainers, suggesting immense personal wealth. His victory at Carrhae made him a legend. Iranian tradition compares him to Rostam, the great hero of Persian epic poetry. But his success threatened Orodes II. Parthian politics were brutal. Kings eliminated rivals. Serena's execution ended his story, but not his legacy. His family, the Surans, remained one of the great noble houses of Parthia. They held the privilege of crowning new kings, placing the diadem on the monarch's head at coronations. This honor persisted for generations after Serena's death. He sent his son Pacorus to invade Syria multiple times, but Roman defenses held. Cassius, the same officer who escaped Carrhae, defeated Pacorus in several skirmishes and killed Ossasis, the second in command at Antigonea. Cassius earned praise from Cicero for defending Syria. Later, in the turmoil after Caesar's assassination, Cassius raised an army in the east and fought alongside Brutus against Mark Antony and Octavian at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. He lost and committed suicide. The chain of events from Carrhae to the fall of the Republic shows how individual battles reshape history. The Romans were settled there, far from home, unable to escape. Some married locals, others served in Parthian armies. A few may have escaped. Plutarch records that the Parthians paraded a Roman prisoner who resembled Crassus, dressed him as a woman, and mocked him as imperator, a direct insult to Roman military culture. The prisoners were degraded, their dignity stripped. For Rome, this was worse than death. Honor mattered. Losing the eagles mattered. Augustus prioritized their return not for military value, but for symbolic restoration of Roman pride. The Parthians, facing internal conflicts and pressure on their eastern borders, agreed to return the standards in exchange for Roman recognition of Parthian sovereignty over Armenia. Both sides claimed victory. Rome recovered its honor. Parthia secured Armenia. The propaganda worked. Romans saw the return as vindication, but Carrhae remained a scar. Military historians studied it. Generals planned campaigns to avoid its mistakes. The defeat lived in memory. When cataphracts could not break the square, he switched to archery. When the Romans formed testudo, he used cataphracts. When Publius charged, he feigned retreat and ambushed him. Flexibility defeated rigidity. Crassus, committed to Roman doctrine, could not adjust. His officers, including Cassius and Octavius, offered alternatives. Crassus rejected them. Command failure compounded tactical disadvantage. Roman soldiers, marching through desert, exhausted before battle, faced an enemy that seemed endless. The drums, the glittering armor, the arrows that never stopped. Psychological warfare broke them. When Publius died, Crassus lost composure. Ancient sources describe him as nearly catatonic. A general who cannot command dooms his army. The retreat to Carrhae became a rout. Men fled individually. Units dissolved. The Parthians hunted survivors. Cold, efficient, professional. Serena had won not just a battle, but a complete annihilation. 42,000 Romans marched into Mesopotamia. 10,000 returned. 75% casualties. Few battles in history match that ratio. Reports and histories now lost. He interviewed descendants of survivors. His biography focuses on character, portraying Crassus as flawed, greedy, ambitious. Cassius Dio, writing a century later, had access to Senate archives and official records. His account emphasizes military details and political consequences. Both sources agree on the main events. Numbers vary slightly. Plutarch says 7 legions, nearly 4,000 cavalry, and as many light troops. Dio says roughly the same. Casualty figures match: 20,000 dead, 10,000 captured. Archaeological evidence from Harran confirms a major battle. Weapon types, burial practices dating all align. Parthian strengths. He argues Crassus's campaign was doomed from the start, lacking intelligence and logistical support. Samson cites Roman sources admitting the army struggled with heat, thirst, and unfamiliar terrain. He also references Parthian sources, limited but available through Armenian and Syriac chronicles. These describe Serena as a brilliant tactician who maximized cavalry advantages. Another key work is The Armies and Enemies of Imperial Rome by Phil Barker and Ian Heath, published in 1976 by the War Games Research Group, which reconstructs Parthian military equipment and tactics using archaeological finds and classical descriptions. Tests showed these bows delivered kinetic energy comparable to modern compound bows. Arrows penetrated period-accurate armor at ranges exceeding 150 yards. Another study in 2015, published in the Journal of Roman Archaeology, examined skeletal remains from the Harran mass grave. Bone trauma indicated arrow wounds, cuts from swords, and fractures from blunt force. The distribution matched Plutarch's description of surrounding Roman formations and shooting from all sides. Forensic analysis confirmed most deaths resulted from exsanguination, bleeding out from multiple wounds. Caesar became dictator. He planned a Parthian campaign to avenge Carrhae, but was assassinated in 44 BC before launching it. The conspirators, including Cassius, who survived Carrhae, claimed they saved the Republic. Instead, they triggered more civil wars. Mark Antony and Octavian defeated the conspirators at Philippi. Then they fought each other. Octavian won at Actium in 31 BC and became Augustus' first emperor. The Republic died. Carrhae contributed. Crassus's death removed a stabilizing force. His failure warned against eastern campaigns. Rome turned west and north, conquering Gaul and Germany instead of Parthia. Trade flourished despite military tension. Silk Road caravans moved through Parthian territory carrying goods from China to Rome. Both empires profited. War disrupted trade. Diplomacy served both sides. Augustus's recovery of the Eagles symbolized this new reality. Neither side could defeat the other decisively. Coexistence became policy. The Sassanids revived Persian imperial traditions, claiming descent from the Achaemenids. They continued fielding heavy cavalry and archers. Roman emperors fought them for 4 centuries. Battles like Edessa in 260 AD and Callinicum in 296 AD replayed Carrhae's dynamics. Cavalry versus infantry. Mobility versus discipline. The Eastern Roman Empire, centered on Constantinople, developed cataphract units to counter Sassanid cavalry. Byzantine military manuals describe combined arms tactics blending cavalry and infantry. By the 6th century, Byzantine cataphracts were among the empire's elite forces. The lessons of Carrhae had finally been learned. 10,000 cavalry beat 40,000 infantry because they fought smarter. Parthian military culture emphasized cavalry from childhood. Boys learned to ride before they walked. Archery was trained relentlessly. Nobles competed in mounted combat. The cataphracts represented aristocratic warrior tradition. The horse archers were commoners, but skilled professionals. Roman legions relied on discipline and close formation. They excelled in Europe against tribal infantry and cavalry. But in the East, against opponents who refused to close and fought at range, Roman tactics failed. Adaptation took generations. Rome eventually integrated auxiliary cavalry, adopted Eastern weapons and modified formations. The process began after Carrhae. Settled at Alexandria Margiana, they formed a Roman community in Central Asia. Some descendants may have joined Parthian armies. Others lived as farmers or craftsmen. The theory that some reached China and founded Lycian remains speculative. DNA studies of Lycian villagers show mixed ancestry, but no conclusive Roman connection. Historians remain skeptical, but the presence of Romans in Parthia is confirmed. Captured legionaries served as garrison troops. Parthian kings used foreign soldiers to balance noble cavalry. The Romans in Margiana were far from home, surrounded by alien culture, unable to escape. Some adapted, some despaired. All were lost to history. Romans retold it to stoke hatred of Parthia. The alternative story, molten gold poured down his throat, served similar propaganda. Both tales emphasized that wealth and ambition led to grotesque death. Crassus had pursued glory for political gain. He died for it. His body was never returned. No funeral, no honors. His family, one of Rome's great houses, suffered disgrace. His surviving son, Marcus Licinius Crassus the Younger, later achieved military success and earned triumphs under Augustus, restoring the family name. But the elder Crassus remained a cautionary tale. Greed destroys, ambition kills, respect the enemy, learn tactics, prepare thoroughly. The lessons were clear. Sulla negotiated with the Parthians in the 90s BC. Pompey dealt with them during his eastern campaigns in the 60s BC, but Crassus launched a full-scale invasion. The Parthians responded with total war. Serena's victory announced that Parthia could challenge Rome militarily. Later battles tested this. Mark Antony's invasion in 36 BC achieved initial success, but supply problems and harassment by Parthian cavalry forced retreat. Antony lost thousands. Trajan invaded in 115 AD, captured Ctesiphon, but died before consolidating gains. His successor Hadrian abandoned Mesopotamia. Septimius Severus campaigned in 197 AD, sacked Ctesiphon, but could not hold territory. Rome and Parthia fought for 2 centuries without decisive victory. The balance established at Carrhae persisted. The mass grave south of Haran, excavated in 2007, provides physical proof. 23 skeletons recovered show trauma consistent with ancient accounts. Arrow wounds in ribs, pelvis and skulls, sword cuts on arms and shoulders indicating defensive injuries, fractures from blunt force suggesting cavalry trampling, radiocarbon dating places, death around 50 BC. Burial was hasty, bodies stacked without order. Roman soldiers honored their dead with proper rites. This pit suggests battlefield cleanup, maybe by Parthians or locals, disposing of corpses before disease spread. The remains were male, aged 20 to 40, consistent with military demographics. Bone analysis indicates Mediterranean origin. These were Romans, killed at Carrhae or shortly after, buried in a foreign land without ceremony. Their story ends in dirt. The logistics of the Parthian victory reveal careful planning. Serena brought 1,000 camels loaded with arrows. Each camel carried approximately 200 pounds of supplies. That is 200,000 pounds total. Even accounting for water, food, and other supplies, he had enough ammunition for sustained combat. 9,000 horse archers, each carrying 50 arrows in a quiver, start with 450,000 arrows. Resupply from camels extends endurance indefinitely. The Romans never had a chance. Carrhae lasted all day. From noon when the Parthians appeared until nightfall when they withdrew. 8 to 10 hours of continuous arrow fire. The Romans bled out slowly. Roman soldiers wore chain mail weighing 15 to 20 pounds, or segmented plate armor weighing 25 to 30 pounds. Add helmet, shield, weapons, total weight around 60 pounds. Marching in that load through desert heat caused dehydration and exhaustion before battle. The Parthians wore lighter armor for horse archers, heavier for cataphracts, but mounted on horses that carried the weight. Mobility meant Parthians could rotate units. Romans stood in formation, baking. Plutarch records soldiers begging for water. No wells nearby, no river. Ariadnes had led them away from water sources deliberately. Dehydration weakened arms. Lifting shields became torture. Eventually, discipline broke. Caesar had conquered Gaul, crossed the Rhine, invaded Britain. Pompey had cleared the Mediterranean of pirates, conquered Syria, reorganized the eastern provinces. Crassus had money, but military glory eluded him. The victory over Spartacus was tainted. Pompey arrived with his legions from Spain at the end and claimed credit. The Senate awarded Pompey a triumph. Crassus received only an ovation, a lesser honor. The resentment festered. In 55 BC, when Crassus got Syria, he saw an opportunity. Intelligence suggested Parthia was distracted. Orodes II had just secured his throne after defeating his brother Mithridates III in 54 BC. Serena had helped Orodes win that civil war at Seleucia. Crassus thought Parthia was vulnerable. He was wrong. When Crassus invaded, Orodes and Serena split forces strategically. Orodes took infantry north against Armenia. Serena took cavalry south against Rome. The plan worked perfectly. Plutarch suggests Crassus did not trust Artavasdes because the Armenian had been close to Pompey. Political rivalry infected military judgment. Crassus also wanted full credit for the victory. Sharing glory with Armenians diluted his triumph. He preferred marching through Mesopotamia directly, capturing cities, claiming plunder. Crassus chose wealth and glory over strategic wisdom. It killed him. The eagle standards lost at Carrhae carried immense symbolic weight. Each legion had one eagle, a silver or gold sculpture mounted on a pole representing the legion's soul. Losing an eagle meant dishonor. At Carrhae, multiple eagles were captured, at least 3, possibly more. The Parthians displayed them as trophies. Roman soldiers died trying to protect their eagles. Standard bearers fought to the last man. The shame haunted Rome for decades. Augustus made recovering them a priority. When Phraates IV agreed to return them in 20 BC, Augustus staged elaborate ceremonies. The eagles were paraded through Rome. Veterans from the defeated legions, now in their 60s and 70s, wept. The return symbolized redemption, but not victory. Rome had paid nothing militarily for their recovery. Parthia kept Armenia. Rome kept face. The tactical evolution following Carrhae shows Rome's adaptability. Immediately after the battle, Cassius defended Syria using guerrilla tactics. He avoided open field battles. He fortified cities. He ambushed Parthian raiding parties. When Pacorus invaded Syria, Cassius lured him into a trap at Antigonea and killed Assasis, the second in command. Cassius used terrain, surprise, and concentrated force. He learned from Carrhae. Do not meet Parthian cavalry in the open. Later, Roman generals adopted these lessons. Mark Antony's invasion in 36 BC included strong cavalry forces and avoided open plains when possible. Trajan's campaigns used combined arms in siege warfare. By the 2nd century AD, Roman armies routinely included auxiliary cavalry from Gaul, Germany, Thrace, and the eastern provinces. Rome also recruited Parthian and Armenian defectors to train Roman cavalry in eastern tactics. The process took generations, but eventually created armies capable of fighting in the east. Historians used Crassus as an example of greed leading to ruin. The story of molten gold, whether true or not, became proverbial. Educational texts taught children about Carrhae. Fathers warned sons against Crassus's mistakes. The battle entered collective memory as a cautionary tale. Do not underestimate enemies. Do not trust wealth alone. Do not ignore advisors. Respect terrain and logistics. The lessons were embedded in Roman military training and political discourse for centuries. Surena became a symbol of military genius and noble sacrifice. His name remained popular in Iran. Persian epic poetry compared him to legendary heroes. The House of Suren retained the honor of crowning kings for centuries, a privilege granted after his victory. In 53 BC, it became a tomb. After the battle, the Parthians withdrew, leaving the region contested. Later empires fortified it, fought over it, rebuilt it. Today, Harran is a small town with ruins of ancient walls. The battlefield itself is farmland now. Wheat fields cover the plain where 20,000 Romans died. No monuments mark the spot, but 5 kilometers south, the mass grave holds 23 skeletons. Physical proof, silent witnesses. The Romans at Carrhae are not forgotten. They are buried under Turkish soil, waiting for archaeologists to tell their story.